I sold the land my grandfather died defending just to pay off a lie. The transfer papers were still warm when I saw the wire confirmation, not to a mortgage lender, to a business bearing my husband's son's name. His photo on the mantel didn't look like family anymore. It looked like evidence. My jaw locked, my tongue sat heavy, like it no longer belonged to me. I wasn't betrayed. I was erased. How many family betrayal stories start in silence and end with everything already gone? Evelyn Harper lived on the quiet edge of Charleston, South Carolina, in a 2-story house built sometime after the war and long before the world got too fast. She was 65, still working part-time at the town library. Her hands moved slowly over old books, cataloging names that no one had spoken aloud in decades. Her husband, Richard, was 67, retired early from a supply logistics firm. He spent most of his time upstairs in what he called his watchtower, a room full of ledgers, screens, and closed doors. They had been married for 28 years, no children of their own. But Richard had a son from a previous marriage. Evelyn had no say in how close they were. She just adapted. It had been a quiet marriage. They rarely fought. They rarely needed to. For Evelyn, quiet meant trust. For Richard, it meant control. The house was filled with things that never moved. The framed photos on the wall hadn't changed in years. The chair by the window had a worn patch on the armrest that matched the curve of Richard's elbow. The silence between them had settled like dust, familiar, undisturbed. Evelyn loved order. She believed in routine. She believed in marriage. And she believed that retirement dreams were built on small sacrifices made over long years. So when Richard came down one morning, holding a notice from the mortgage company, she listened. His voice was tight. "There's a shortfall," he said. "We're behind, and I don't want us to lose the house." He wasn't panicked, just serious, heavy. He sat beside her, took her hand. "It might be time," he said. "That land in North Carolina, the one from your grandfather, we haven't done anything with it in years." That land was more than property. It was memory. It was where she'd spent summers barefoot, chasing bees, eating biscuits on the back porch with her grandfather's hand resting on her shoulder. But she said yes. They filed the paperwork together. She signed her name. And just like that, the soil her grandfather bled for became a number on a screen. 3 weeks later, she spilled her coffee in the hallway while dusting. It seeped under the door of Richard's office. She knocked, then noticed it was ajar. He was out in the garden. She pushed it open. The desk was tidy, almost staged. His laptop sat in the center, glowing. She didn't mean to look, but the screen didn't hide. It showed a transaction. $437,200 wired to an account for Harper and Knox Ventures, LLC. Her eyes narrowed. She clicked through the open tabs. Company registry. 2 managers listed James R., Harper Richard's son, and a woman she didn't know. No mention of any mortgage. No mention of her. She didn't breathe. Not at first. A chill ran down her spine, not sharp, but wide and spreading. Her hands began to tremble. The laptop closed under her fingers before she realized she'd moved. She stepped back, the mug on the floor, half empty. She picked it up, walked to the kitchen, turned on the faucet. Hot water overflowed the sink, soaking her sleeves. She stood still, not feeling the heat, just the sound of rushing water. That night, Richard said nothing. He sat in his chair, sipping tea, reading the news like nothing had ever happened. Evelyn said nothing, too, but something had split inside her. That week, she didn't return to work. Instead, she visited the county clerk's office. She pulled every public record she could find on Harper and Knox Ventures. She printed bank records, company ownership charts. The pieces came together. What she was looking at wasn't just betrayal. It was marriage fraud disguised in politeness. A man doesn't need to lie loudly to destroy something. Sometimes, all he has to do is speak softly and leave enough blanks for you to fill in yourself. Evelyn sat on the floor of her hallway that evening and whispered the words out loud. My grandfather's land is gone, and I gave it to a man who passed it along like it was nothing. In that moment, she didn't feel angry. She felt weightless, like her name had been removed from something without her knowing. The next morning, she placed every document in a manila folder and called a lawyer, a woman named Lorraine who had grey hair and steady eyes. Lorraine listened, nodded, and said, "We see this more often than you think. You're not alone. These are the real family drama stories, the ones no one writes down." Evelyn nodded. Her voice was quiet but certain. "I just want to know where I end and where his lies begin." The sun poured through the windows as she left the law office. She walked slowly, the folder pressed to her chest like a shield. She knew the money might be gone. The investment would likely fail. Richard's son wasn't a businessman. He was a fantasy dressed in paperwork. But that didn't matter now, because silence was no longer her home. Because what had been taken in the quiet would be answered in clarity. The real damage wasn't the money. It was the moment Evelyn realized she had signed her name on something she didn't understand, because she thought understanding wasn't her job. That belief was the root, a quiet lie dressed up as trust. When someone you love shares a house with you, sleeps beside you, and looks you in the eye every day, you stop thinking you need protection from them. That's how the betrayal slips in unnoticed. Evelyn had believed that love and legality walked hand in hand. That marriage meant shared decisions. But what she faced was something far more subtle: control, masked as care. Manipulation disguised as marital loyalty. It wasn't the loud kind of deception. It was soft, methodical, legal. And because it was legal, she never saw it coming. Richard had breached not just their emotional trust, but their legal one. In a marriage, every financial decision that impacts both partners must be disclosed and agreed upon, especially when it involves marital property. Evelyn's signature had been guided by emotion. Richard's actions had been guided by strategy. It was a textbook case of financial infidelity, one partner secretly moving money, assets, or investments behind the other's back. But in Evelyn's case, the violation went even deeper. She was over 65. That placed her under a category most people never want to admit exists vulnerable to elder financial abuse. Her age, her trust, and her perceived dependence made her a target, even within her own home. Still, she didn't stay broken. The first thing Evelyn did was meet with a lawyer who specialized in marital asset law and elder rights. She brought everything: the land sale documents, the wire records, the ownership listings of the company where the money went. The lawyer confirmed that Evelyn had grounds to challenge Richard's use of the funds, because the land, although inherited, had become part of the marital estate once they decided to use it for household debt. And since the funds were diverted into a business not jointly owned or declared, Richard had violated his fiduciary duty. Next, Evelyn's lawyer drafted a formal disclosure request. This document legally obligated Richard to present a full list of financial activities from the past 5 years, including business transfers, bank accounts, and any assets held by his son under his direction. If Richard failed to comply, the court could penalize him by favoring Evelyn in any future division of property. Then came the hardest part: regaining control. Evelyn opened a new bank account in her name only. She transferred her remaining assets into it, including a small savings account her father had left her decades ago. She also reviewed every document she had previously signed and flagged, any that needed revision, especially her will and financial power of attorney. Lastly, she documented everything: emails, letters, even conversations. Every detail mattered, because the next time someone tried to speak for her, she'd have a record of what she'd already said for herself. She and Richard never divorced, but the silence between them grew colder. The money Richard had invested vanished slowly. His son's business collapsed under its own weight. Evelyn stopped checking the balance. She had already marked it as gone the day she walked out of that office. What mattered now wasn't what had been lost. It was what she was building clear, deliberate, and hers alone. Evelyn did not pack in anger. She folded her sweaters gently, one by one, as if placing away a version of herself that no longer fit. The house by the river had grown quiet in a different way, now tense, hollow. Richard still came and went. They still shared the same kitchen, but no longer the same life. She moved into a small apartment above the hardware store in the town where she grew up. It had one bedroom, a creaky window, and a view of the post office. The landlord was an old friend of her father's. Rent was fair. The light came in soft in the morning. For the first time in decades, Evelyn did not organize her days around someone else's needs. She began volunteering 3 afternoons a week at the public library, this time not to sort books, but to host something new. A workshop called Know What You Sign. Women came, some younger, many older, all carrying folders, questions, and long sighs. Evelyn shared her story. She listened to theirs. One woman cried when she learned her name had been removed from a bank account. Another asked if her husband's new business partner needed to be listed in their joint tax return. Evelyn didn't have every answer, but she had one thing they didn't expect: clarity. She taught them how to find property records, how to request account statements, how to say, without guilt, "I need to see that in writing." When she wasn't teaching, she was writing. Her journal filled up quickly. She wrote about her grandfather's land, about silence, about how trust, once broken, never returns in the same shape. As for Richard, he stayed in the old house. His son's company folded after 2 failed quarters. The money was gone. No one came to collect. No one called to ask why. Evelyn had stopped wondering. She had already grieved that version of herself. She wasn't angry anymore, but she wasn't the same. The story she now lived was not one of loss, but of return. Not to what was, but to who she had always been before she handed over her voice. Some family betrayal stories never get told. Evelyn decided hers would, and she would not whisper it. Because someone, somewhere, needed to hear that it was possible to begin again, not because the damage wasn't real, but because healing was. She did not become someone else. She became someone more. If you are living in the quiet space of a marriage that no longer feels equal, take one evening this week. Open your drawer. Look at your documents. Ask yourself, do I know where everything goes when I sign my name? Start there. And if you don't know, write it down. Ask. Share. Say it out loud. Because the stories we tell in silence are the ones that keep us powerless, but the ones we speak might just save someone else.